There is a pattern in history that governments never speak about, that economists refuse to name, that the powerful try to erase from memory before it spreads. 3 times in the last 3 centuries, empires that believed themselves eternal followed an identical sequence of stages, denied every warning, dismissed every parallel, and collapsed in ways that seemed impossible until the moment it happened. And right now, the world is following the exact same sequence, step by step, with the precision of a machine programmed for self-destructs. Rome did not fall because of barbarians. Rome fell because for 200 years, its elites expanded beyond their means, debased their currency to fund wars they could not afford, created a class of institutions so large they could not be allowed to fail. And when the weight became unbearable, when the frontier could no longer hold, when the grain shipments stopped and the silver ran out, the system did not bend. It shattered. But before it shattered, there was a long period of denial. The senators still believed. The merchants still traded. The citizens still assumed tomorrow would look like yesterday. They were wrong. The collapse, when it came, moved faster than anyone thought possible. Within a generation, the roads were empty. The aqueducts cracked. The cities starved. And the people who had lived in the greatest empire on earth found themselves in a world without law, without trade, without certainty. They all thought they were different. They all believed their system was too complex, too advanced, too interconnected to collapse. History did not care what they believed. Spain, 1640. For a century, the Spanish Empire controlled more territory than Rome ever dreamed of. Silver poured in from the Americas. The sun never set on Spanish lands. The monarchy spent without limit, borrowed without hesitation, and assumed the flow of wealth would never stop. But underneath, the structure was rotting. The debt accumulated. The currency inflated. The military overextended. The provinces grew restless. And then, in a single decade, everything broke. Portugal revolted. Catalonia erupted. The Netherlands escaped. The silver stopped. The banks collapsed. And Spain, the superpower that had dominated Europe for generations, became a shell, a memory, a warning that no one heeded. This is not theory. This is historical fact. And the people of Spain, right until the end, believed it could not happen to them. They had the new world. They had the gold. They had God on their side. None of it mattered. Once the foundation cracks, collapse is inevitable. The only variable is speed. Britain, 1945. The greatest empire in human history. An empire that spanned a quarter of the globe. An empire with the largest navy. The most advanced industry. The most sophisticated financial system. Stood victorious after the greatest war ever fought. And within 2 years, it was over. Not destroyed by enemies. Dismantled by debt. The war had been funded by borrowing from the future, by selling assets, by depending on American credit. And when the war ended, the bill came due. Britain could not pay. The pound collapsed. The empire dissolved. India was gone. Africa was gone. The Middle East slipped away. And the British elites, who had ruled the world for 2 centuries, watched helplessly as their system disintegrated, not in war, but in insolvency. They all thought they were different. They thought victory meant survival. They were wrong. History repeats not because it has to, but because people never change. They make the same choices, they believe the same illusions, they ignore the same warnings. Every one of these collapses followed the same hidden mechanism, a sequence so consistent it might as well be a law of nature. First, expansion. The system grows beyond its natural limits, driven by ambition, by greed, by the belief that growth can continue forever. Then, overstretch. The cost of maintaining the system exceeds the revenue it generates. Debt becomes the solution. Borrowing replaces earning. The elites, instead of contracting, double down. They believe confidence is all that matters. They believe perception can replace reality. It cannot. Then comes the illusion of stability. For years, sometimes decades, the system appears fine. The markets function. The currency holds. The public remains calm. But underneath, the math is breaking. The debt compounds. The interest accumulates. The productive base erodes. And then, the crack. It always starts small. A bank fails, a province rebels, a currency drops, and the elites respond with denial. They call it temporary, they call it manageable. They promise intervention, they promise solutions. But the crack spreads, and once it spreads, confidence breaks, and once confidence breaks, the collapse accelerates. What took centuries to build disintegrates in a season. The pattern does not care about belief or ideology. The math never lies. Once the system enters this phase, collapse accelerates. We are already in stage 4. Look at the numbers, not the narratives. Global debt has exceeded 300% of global GDP. Central banks, the institutions designed to stabilize currencies, have become the largest buyers of government bonds, printing money to fund deficits that can never be repaid. The United States, the current empire, runs trillion-dollar deficits in peacetime in boom years, with no plan to stop. Europe is trapped in a monetary union that cannot function without constant bailouts, constant intervention, constant denial of the underlying insolvency. China has built an economy on debt-fueled infrastructure, creating ghost cities and phantom growth to maintain the illusion of progress. And every major economy has declared, implicitly or explicitly, that certain institutions are too big to fail. Banks, corporations, governments. The message is clear: the system will be preserved at any cost. But preservation is not survival. Preservation is delay. The stretching of time until the weight becomes unbearable. Politically, the fragmentation has already begun. Trust in institutions is collapsing across the developed world. Populations are dividing into hostile camps, not over policy, but over reality itself. Elites are more isolated, more defensive, more certain of their righteousness than at any point in generations. And when collapse begins, when the economic foundation cracks, the political response will not be reform. It will be control. It always is. History shows this with perfect clarity. When Rome's economy collapsed, the emperors did not shrink the state. They expanded it. They imposed price controls. They devalued the currency further. They blamed merchants, blamed foreigners, blamed anyone but themselves. When Spain's empire fractured, the monarchy did not decentralize. It tightened its grip, increased taxation, crushed dissent, and accelerated the very collapse it sought to prevent. When Britain's system broke, the government did not reduce spending. It nationalized industries, rationed goods, printed money, and watched as the pound lost half its value in a decade. The pattern is always the same. The elites, faced with collapse, choose control over contraction. They choose inflation over default. They choose propaganda over honesty. And the public, until the very end, believes them. Socially, the decay is visible everywhere. Communities have fractured. Families are divided. Trust has evaporated. People live in separate realities, fed by algorithms designed to maximize engagement, not truth. The social fabric, the invisible network of shared belief and mutual obligation that holds civilizations together, is disintegrating. And when the economic collapse begins, when jobs disappear, when savings evaporate, when the currency loses credibility, that social decay will accelerate into chaos, not revolution. Chaos, because revolutions require organization, require shared goals, require leaders with vision. What comes instead is fragmentation, tribalism, violence without purpose, desperation without direction. This is what happened in Rome. This is what happened in Spain. This is what happened in Weimar Germany when the currency collapsed, and a wheelbarrow of money could not buy bread. The collapse of money is not just economic. It is psychological. It destroys the social contract. It turns neighbors into enemies. It makes survival the only law. Psychologically, the modern world is already in denial. The signs are everywhere. The debt ratios, the money printing, the asset bubbles inflated to levels that made 2008 look quaint, the political dysfunction, the social unrest, the environmental stress, and yet the majority remains calm, not because the situation is stable, but because they have been trained to ignore instability, to trust the system, to believe that someone, somewhere, is in control. They believe central banks can print forever. They believe governments can borrow forever. they believe the stock market reflects the real economy. They believe growth will return. They believe technology will save us. They believe this time is different. They are wrong. This time is not different. This time is identical. The same stages, the same illusions, the same denial. The only difference is scale. The empires of the past controlled regions. The system collapsing now is global. The debt of the past was measured in millions. The debt now is measured in trillions. The collapse of the past affected millions. The collapse now will affect billions. Once confidence breaks, systems fall faster than anyone expects. The collapse never moves in a straight line. It jumps. A currency crisis in one country spreads to its trading partners. A bank failure triggers a liquidity freeze. A government default causes a bond market panic. And the central banks, the institutions everyone believes will intervene, will print, will save the system, discover that printing money does not create wealth, it destroys it. Inflation is not a policy, it is a symptom, it is the visible manifestation of a currency losing credibility. And once credibility is lost, it cannot be restored by printing more. The more they print, the faster confidence evaporates. The faster confidence evaporates, the more desperate the measures become. Price controls, capital controls, rationing, nationalization, and then, inevitably, the final stage, the break. The moment when the currency collapses completely, when the government loses control, when the population realizes the system has no answers. History shows this sequence with brutal clarity. Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Argentina. Every hyperinflation follows the same path, slow at first, then exponential, then total.